Rome, once the world's beating heart, shaped law, culture, and power for centuries. But its grandeur masked a slow, fatal unraveling. To understand Rome's collapse, we must dissect the deep failures that hollowed it out from within, long before the final fall. Rome's political machine, once the pride of the Republic, had begun to show deep cracks. The very foundations upon which its power was built were starting to crumble, weakened by internal strife and systemic corruption. The heart of the empire, once vibrant and strong, was now plagued by rot. This machine, once its engine of expansion, driving its legions across continents and bringing wealth and glory back to Rome, became a source of chaos. The Senate, meant to be a beacon of wisdom and stability, descended into a battleground of personal ambition and petty squabbles. The 3rd century saw emperor after emperor, each one vying for power, often through treachery and violence. Rise and fall, their reigns marked by instability and bloodshed. Over 20 in 50 years, a dizzying succession that left the empire reeling, most killed by their own men, betrayed by those sworn to protect them. The Praetorian Guard, once the emperor's shield, became his executioner. Civil war became routine, brother turned against brother, legion against legion, draining resources and shattering trust in government. The endless conflicts bled the empire dry, leaving it vulnerable to external threats. Corruption flourished. It became a way of life for many in positions of power. Officials plundered treasuries, lining their own pockets while the empire teetered on the brink of collapse, and sold power, influence, and justice to the highest bidder, eroding the very idea of a unified state. The bonds that held the empire together were weakening, threatening to tear it apart. The Senate, once powerful, became a puppet, its voice silenced by the whims of emperors and the machinations of corrupt officials. And the empire drifted without vision or stability, lost in a sea of uncertainty. Short-term gain replaced long-term planning as leaders focused on enriching themselves rather than securing the future of Rome. And the machinery of government seized up, unable to address the mounting crises facing the empire. Political instability wasn't just a symptom. It was a deeply rooted disease. It was a primary cause of Rome's decline, accelerating its descent into chaos and eventual collapse. Rome's economy, once the envy of the ancient world, a powerhouse of trade and prosperity, began to show cracks. The seeds of its decline were sown not in a single event, but in a series of interconnected factors that gradually eroded its foundations. This economy was once fueled by conquest, by the constant influx of wealth and resources from newly conquered territories. The spoils of war filled the Roman coffers, funding public works, enriching the elite, and providing a semblance of prosperity for the masses. But this model was unsustainable. As expansion slowed and eventually stopped, the flow of new resources dried up. The vast empire, stretched thin across continents, began to suffocate as expansion stopped, its economic arteries slowly constricting. To compensate for the dwindling spoils of war, the emperors turned to ever-increasing taxation. Crushing taxes levied on every aspect of Roman life became the norm. These taxes, often arbitrary and excessive, drove farmers from their land, forcing them into destitution and swelling the ranks of the urban poor. This exodus from the countryside had a devastating impact, breaking the backbone of Roman agriculture and leading to food shortages and widespread famine. Desperate to maintain spending, the emperors resorted to currency debasement, reducing the silver content of Roman coins. This short-sighted policy triggered rampant inflation as the value of money plummeted and prices soared. The result was economic chaos, wiping out savings and confidence in the financial system. As the economy spiraled downwards, trade faltered, further exacerbating the crisis. The seas became increasingly dangerous as piracy rose, preying on merchant ships and disrupting vital supply lines. The risks of maritime commerce became too great, and commerce became too risky, leading to a decline in trade and further economic hardship. Furthermore, reliance on slave labor stifled innovation and technological advancement, hindering long-term economic growth. When conquest slowed, the system collapsed, revealing the inherent fragility of an economy built on exploitation. The empire was left with a shrinking tax base, unable to support its vast military and administrative apparatus. Compounding the problem was a vast, impoverished underclass, a growing segment of the population that contributed little to the economy, but required constant support. Rome's economic decline was a slow strangulation, a gradual process of decay that sapped its strength and vitality. Ultimately, this economic weakness left it too weak to defend itself against internal strife and external threats, contributing to its eventual downfall. The legendary Roman legions, once invincible, decayed as recruitment faltered and discipline waned. Rome turned to mercenaries, Goths, Franks, Vandals, whose loyalty was to gold, not Rome. The army became a patchwork of unreliable warbands, prone to rebellion and desertion. Key defeats like Adrianople shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. The military's decline left the empire's borders dangerously exposed. Rome's sword was no longer sharp. It was wielded by uncertain hands. The empire's greatest defense had become its greatest vulnerability. As Rome weakened, its vast empire, once a symbol of unparalleled strength and order, began to show cracks in its foundation. The signs were subtle at first, a gradual erosion of power that spread like a creeping vine across its territories. Then came the waves of migrating peoples, entire tribes and cultures on the move, seeking new lands and opportunities, driven by forces both internal and external. These migrations would test the very limits of Rome's defenses. Goths, fierce warriors from the north, pressed against the Roman frontier, their numbers growing, their demands increasing. They sought land, recognition, and a place within the Roman world, but their methods were often brutal. Vandals, skilled seafarers and raiders, carved a path of destruction across the Mediterranean, their ships striking fear into the hearts of coastal cities. They would eventually establish a kingdom in North Africa, a dagger pointed at Rome's underbelly. Huns, nomadic horsemen from the steppes of Central Asia, their arrival sent shockwaves across Europe, displacing tribes and creating a domino effect of migration and conflict. Their reputation for ruthlessness preceded them, striking terror into the hearts of even the most seasoned Roman soldiers. These groups pressed relentlessly at its borders, probing for weaknesses, exploiting divisions, and testing the limits of Rome's military might. The empire, stretched thin and burdened by internal problems, struggled to contain the onslaught. The sack of Rome in 410 AD, a cataclysmic event that shook the world, by Alaric's Visigoths, a moment of profound humiliation for the once proud capital. It shattered the empire's aura of invincibility, revealing its vulnerability to the world and signaling a turning point in its long and storied history. The Vandals seized North Africa, a vital breadbasket for the city of Rome, crippling Rome's food supply and trade, and further weakening its already fragile economy. Famine and unrest spread throughout the city, adding to the growing sense of despair. In 476 AD, a date that would forever be etched in the annals of history, Odoacer, a barbarian general in Roman service, deposed the last Western emperor, a young man named Romulus Augustulus, ending imperial rule in the West, not with a clash of armies, but with a quiet resignation. There was no dramatic last stand, no heroic defense of the city, just a quiet transfer of power, a symbolic act that marked the end of an era. It was a whimper, not a bang, as Rome's authority faded, its institutions crumbling, its spirit broken. The Western Empire ended not with a bang, a final glorious battle, but a whimper, a slow, agonizing decline that culminated in a quiet surrender. The relentless tide of migration, a human wave that crashed against the shores of the empire, finished what internal decay had begun, leaving behind a legacy of both destruction and transformation. The world would never be the same. Diocletian split the empire in two, east and west, hoping to save it. The east, rich and stable, thrived. The west, poor and beset by crisis, withered. The two halves grew apart, hoarding resources and acting in self-interest. The east deflected invasions westward, leaving the west to face disaster alone. The split drained the west of vital resources, accelerating its decline. The east endured as Byzantium. The west was left exposed and isolated. Division, meant to save Rome, hastened its fall. Roman writers mourned a loss of discipline and civic virtue, replaced by decadence and apathy. The elite retreated into luxury, while the masses lost faith in old values and rituals. Whether real or perceived, this moral decay fueled a sense of resignation and inevitability about Rome's fall. Rome's vast size became its undoing, its borders stretched thin, its bureaucracy overwhelmed. Communication delays crippled crisis response. The military was always on the defensive. Governing dozens of diverse provinces required a bloated, corrupt administration. Tax collection and infrastructure maintenance became impossible at scale. The empire grew beyond its ability to manage itself. Its size, once a symbol of strength, became a fatal weakness. Rome buckled under the weight of its own ambition. As Rome's old certainties crumbled, Christianity rose, offering hope and community. Constantine's conversion and the Edict of Milan made Christianity the state religion. Loyalty shifted from emperor to church, which grew in power and influence. The church provided services and stability the state could not, competing with imperial authority. Some saw Christianity's values as undermining Rome's martial spirit. The rise of Christianity coincided with and contributed to the erosion of the classical Roman world. Rome's collapse was a slow, internal decay, finished by external blows. When the end came, the empire was already a hollow shell, its spirit gone, its legacy left to shape a new world.